Hello. So here we are, 4:30. I no doubt stand between you and a number of different receptions. So I'm going to try and go through this pretty quickly. Um, I think I have a fairly simple message that I want you to take away at the end of this talk. So AI provides the opportunity to create new products. But if you're a small to medium-sized organization, getting to scale to work with these kinds of technologies is difficult. And so the key message of my talk today isn't really so much about the AI as about what do you need to have lined up in your organization to enable your organization to create the kinds of partnerships that allow you to build tools with these technologies. So it's not AI first, it's strategy first. And in terms of partnerships, I've been thinking a little bit about how large language models bend the story on this a bit, and I'm going to have some thoughts about that at the very end. But the key message of my talk here today is it's strategy first, AI second. And I'm going to start with my definition of AI. So I think broadly speaking, AI is the ability of a machine to mimic intelligence and to do tasks that are usually done by people and that are hard to define often. And if we can get a machine to do that, and we can run those across computers at scale, then you can get completion and accuracy rates that are much harder to achieve with people because you're doing it at scale. And so when we think about AI, it gives you the following kinds of product benefits. You can do things faster than you could do before. You can potentially do things cheaper than you can do before. And it may open the ability to do things that you weren't able to do before. So when you think about your context in your market, the products you have, the customers you serve, those three things tend to be the dimensions that you can pull on when you're working with AI. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are at the British Medical Journal to give you a sense of what our scale is. So we were founded in 1840, so we've been around for a while. This is one of our early adverts that we had in one of the early journals, and we were very much an advert-driven product in the early days. And we were very happy in our first edition that we made more money on advertising than The Lancet had made in all of its previous editions up until the point that we came out with our first edition in 1840. So there's always been a bit of a competitive element there. We've had some real successes in the medical space, reported on the first discovery of chloroform. We published articles by Joseph Lister on the use of antisepsis in surgery and the connection between malaria and mosquitoes. Now, we've had lots of other publications of relevance since 1898, I'd like to say, but those were just some of the more interesting ones from our archive. And today, we kind of view ourselves as an organization whose mission is to improve global health. And we view what we do through the lens of how we can measure the impact that we have. And we've created this impact framework. We want to have better evidence, better decisions, better systems. And so our product suites all support us in our mission to try and do these things. But we have been around since 1840. We are primarily an editorial-driven organization. We have a range of multiple different products in market. And so we are kind of mid to small scale. And the ability for us to then just drop tools and completely change what we're doing to spin up a new product team or build the technology that we need to take advantage of these tools is fairly minimal. So what I want to say is you have to start with the strategy of what you want to work with. And we started with a strategy process a couple of years ago. Now, our strategy is not rocket science. It's not like when I show you the kinds of topics that we have in our strategy here, you're not going to look at that and go, oh, there's something remarkable. There's no secret sauce there. It's fairly common kinds of strategic lines that many publishers of our scale would go after. So we want to make sure, for example, that we have our portfolio in good shape. We want to understand what we're doing around open access, the quality of our editorial work, what we're doing with our non-OA content, how we can drive personalization, how we can develop new products. Now, there's nothing there. Oh, I've just found they have the slides down here. This is super handy. So there's nothing in there that you would say is rocket science. But I'll tell you what I think the reason is for having a strategy, right? The reason why you need to have a strategy is at some point, your organization is going to need to make decisions. And to make those decisions, you're going to make people or ask people to change what they're doing at some part of their workflow. They are going to either need to start collaborating in different groups or make a case for funding for a certain type of project or investment. And if that can be done under the framework of strategic alignment, instead of those ideas popping up across the organization in random pockets, and they may be good ideas, having everyone aligned around what we're trying to do as an organization makes those conversations easier. It makes people from different departments easier to come together, and it makes it easier to create the alignment that you need to create the success that you have in the organization. So in one of our areas of strategy, our global publishing strategy, we had these 5 areas that we wanted to pursue. And in each of these areas, we spun up groups who went away to try and think of new things that they could do to support those activities of the business. And that led to folks in those areas coming up with ideas of bets that they wanted to make in those different ideas. And so when we think about that, what we have now is we've got alignment of idea, alignment of mission, groups of people thinking about how can I make a bet that will move us forward in those areas of alignment. That's great. But next you need to think about, okay, how are we going to coordinate those bets and how are we going to make decisions on which ones go forward or which ones stay in the back pocket or which ones get dropped. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the framework that we used for the decisions around the bet-making process. And then I'll lead you through an example that didn't work and finally the example that did work. And then we'll be where we want to go with the talk today. So this is quite a nice way of thinking about the evolution of a product over time. When you bring a new product into market, at the very beginning, people don't know about it. The number of people who are using it are tiny. So it has opportunity to grow. Over a period of time, that product in market will kind of saturate. It'll get to as far as it can go in terms of how much money you're investing in sales. And then sometimes, eventually, the products decline and you need to think about new things that you want to do. So one of the first questions to ask is, where in this life cycle are you beginning to make bets? If you make lots of bets down here, that's the new stuff. That's usually where your innovation teams are. That's the exciting stuff in the organization. It's usually easier to get something off the ground, but usually revenues are really tiny in this area. If you make bets here, those are products where you think there's still opportunity to grow in market, opportunity for growth. And around here, you're looking at optimizing costs. Revenues are already good, but changing scaled systems is really costly. And so a really good question to ask yourself is, as you're looking at these ideas that come out of your strategy framework, where in this life cycle could that idea live? And that should tell you the approximate amount of money that you're willing to place on those bets. Lots of small, cheap bets down here, lots of careful consideration here, because if you're shifting things at the engine of your business and you make a change and you mess it up, that could have really bad consequences. So usually it's easier to innovate down here, and normally you get better returns at the places where you already have product market fit. So I'm going to talk you through 2 ideas that we went through, which are kind of down in this part of that framework. This slide is just to say, one of the things that AI can do, if you can do things faster, cheaper, or create new opportunities, it usually means you can try new things faster down here. And usually, if you can get better scale in your organization, you can eke out the product, the kind of revenue curve or profit curve on your main lines of business up here. So that's kind of in my view of how AI shifts the needle on product innovation and product development. Okay, so there's a little bit of an intro into how we went through the process of deciding how to make some of the bets that we made. And this was the mantra of the team that worked on those early stage ideas. All of the concepts could fail. Our opinions are interesting, but they're irrelevant. We have to test our ideas with customers, and our concepts will change as we learn. Now, the last one is particularly an important message, not for the teams that are working on the ideas, not for the people or your customers you're talking to. That idea is super important for the senior people in the organization. Because if you show them an idea one month and then you show them an idea the next month and they go, wait a minute, this changed. I thought we were talking about that thing. You have to remind them that it's an evolutionary process. Because otherwise they'll just remember the last thing you told them. Key tip. So let's walk through an example that didn't work for us. So we had this idea of an AI-powered literature review tool. Wouldn't it be great? Get an AI to do all the literature review. That sounds like a great idea. You've probably heard of many people talking about that idea today. I would like this tool. And so this was the product vision that the team came up with. It helps people keep on top of the literature because the AI will do all the heavy lifting for you. And that's a simple idea. But behind every idea, there are branching opportunities and concepts behind it. And so for each of the ideas that we worked on, we created a kind of value opportunity tree or an idea branching tree. And you can see even in that simple concept, there are already, a couple of dozen sub-ideas that could be executed. And so what that means is even with the simple idea, you have to start building prototypes and testing them with possible customers. And the team did that. And used, this is a very nice framework. It's called a lean canvas. And on that, you kind of set your idea around what the problem is, what the solution is, who the users might be, what the channels to market might be, what the customers might be. And so one of the things I often see in product innovation where it fails is a team will focus on just one of these areas, but that won't be the critical point of success. They'll think of like, oh, can we do this with the tech? We think that's the hardest thing. And they work on the technology, they get it built. But what they have failed to observe is the product already exists for cheaper and someone else is selling it, for example. I've seen that happen. So with the idea that I just said, we went through that process. I think we talked to probably maybe 20 different customers over a number of iterations of the idea of the product. And then this is where we landed. Is there a validated market problem? Yes, there is. Did the proposition we designed, and we found a partner who built some prototypes, a partner in Silicon Valley who had the AI capabilities, who built prototypes that we put in front of customers. Did it solve their problem? It did solve their problem. Was it unique and defensible? Somewhat. There were a couple of other products that people were already using. Would people pay us for it? We couldn't validate that. We couldn't validate that people would actually in the end say, yeah, that's compelling enough that I'm going to open my checkbook and actually make a deal with you and turn this into a product that could be successful in terms of our addressable market and how we could bring that tool to market. So these are some of the kinds of processes that I think you need to go through if you're a small to medium organization who's looking for a partnership. It's quite easy to find people who will want to work with you, but you have to think about, is this idea something that I have the capability within my organization to bring successfully to market? Does it align with the strategy? And when we're asking for that investment, does everyone in the organization know, yeah, the marketing people are going to take some of their time to promote this, the salespeople will bring that to their customers, and the executives are going to be happy to understand the envelope of investment, even if it's a medium to small envelope. All right, let's talk about an idea that did work for us. Okay, so in our opportunity solutions tree, the idea of impact came up. This is critical to our industry. And we found a potential partner, a very small startup based out of London called Overton. And this is a startup this is where the AI comes in, right? What Overton do, and the person who founded this is an expert in, is use natural language processing to scan through large volumes of policy documents. And so documents like government reports, WHO reports, documents from the Resolution Foundation, other think tanks. And so researchers usually think about impact through the framework of citations, but institutions, funders, government bodies want to know if any of that research is translating into policy. And the problem with policy documents is they don't cite the literature in the same way that other academics cite the literature. They refer to academic papers in a loose, informal way within the body of the text. And so the AI in this tool used NLP to build that map. If I have this particular government department, who are the research institutes it most often refers to? If I am this research department or university, which governments are most often reading my research? Now you ask a person who's responsible for measuring the impact of their institution if they would like to get that information, and the first thing they tell you is, how much do I have to pay you? So we thought, okay, this is a really interesting tool, but it's a really small team. Also, in our addressable market, general impact is not as interesting to us as specifically clinical impact. Do we have data that we have unique access to that we could combine with Overton's data to create a very segmented, targeted addressable market for this tool? We found that we did. We had information about clinical trials, evidential information on best practice, and we were able to combine that information with Overton, and in this way it became a kind of a win-win. So Overton had reputation experience from previous startup that they had made. They had the technology that we didn't have. They had the infrastructure and existing data and proof of value. We had the brand to bring this product to market in the healthcare market. We have the ability and resource to actually put sales teams together. And so we could bring a combined product to market successfully. Overton were able to scale who would use their product through partnering with us, and we were able to validate willingness to pay. So this is the product we created with Overton. It's called the BMJ Impact Analytics. And I am very glad to say it has been a success. We started in early 2022, announced a collaboration in September 22, and the first customer was already secured in December. Now, I was only involved in an advisory capacity within BMJ. The teams that built this, I was able to help them with some advice. Some of my teams helped. It is astonishing to go from a partnership collaboration idea at the beginning of a year to having your first customer in the end of that same year. It was an astonishing achievement. I'm really proud of the teams that did that. It was really great. I can say for us now, we have a government organization funder as a customer, a cancer charity, pharma, a foundation, a cancer research institute, and a hospital. And what's important for us as an organization is these all represent customers that we didn't have natural access to before. Our traditional market were libraries and hospitals. This has now opened a new segment of the market for us. We're delighted with that. It's still a small product. It's still in that bottom of that innovation curve, but we hope that it will grow over time. And it was a relatively small investment. But what it took was finding a partner and building the trust and creating the internal alignment around working with that partner. I've been involved in other organizations. I've been involved in other partnership discussions which have not worked because we weren't able to find that alignment. So yes, AI opened a class of capability that didn't exist in market before, but AI was not the critical factor of success. And for any organization that is looking at AI, do not forget what the critical factors of success will be for anything that you invest in. That's the main message. All right, I'm just going to give a quick perspective on large language models. Now, the reason we partner with organizations is because actually working well with any form of machine learning or AI requires a level of expertise that usually organizations of our scale find difficult to access. Large language models shift the calculus on this a little bit. And one of the reasons for that is they have this capability which is called zero-shot learning, where you can just give them a task and they will just get on with that task. And so being able to, you can get basically, the way I like to think about this is an LLM is like an extremely dumb partner that can do machine learning for you. And so that comes with some opportunities that you can suddenly start to create value within your organization if you think about it in that way. So, but you're probably sick to the teeth of hearing about large language models and AI. What I'd say is, again, start with strategy. What we did at BMJ is with our board, we set out what is the strategy for how we are going to think about working with these tools, how are we going to get alignment about working with them, and how are we going to put the proper governance in place. And what we said is, in terms of where there's certainty to disruptiveness with these kinds of technologies, this bit in the middle around workflow and internal tooling is probably the area where we have complete control ourselves, a bit of uncertainty about how disruptive it will be. This area about how it's going to change the customer context is highly uncertain, but potentially very disruptive. So we want to be placing bets in these different areas so that we can learn. So in order to allow ourselves to do that in the organization, we've created a governance group. We think that these tools, if we leak fake content into the market, that puts at risk our reputation. That's the existential risk for us. And so the governance group looks at use cases, checks that there is no leakage of private data, checks that there's no inadvertent displacement of workflows, checks that any of the workflows or ideas that are put forward, if there is output that customers will see, the right governance and risk management is put in place. And we've had some real success to date. Our software teams use it to help with software development. We've done some data analysis on user research. It's helped us manage our SAP infrastructure. We're investigating whether it can do copy editing, and I can tell we're already pretty much behind the curve on that one from some of the announcements that came out this week. But there's definitely value there. But I'd say the way we're using the tools today, they're a bit like ready-to-handedness. We're just picking up the tools that are available, OpenAI, Vertex AI. I think real value will come from thinking about how you take these tools and put them into very specific elements of workflow. So we've started that process inside of BMJ. We've kind of mapped out the areas of opportunity for us. And my experience is, if you go to a potential partner and say you're interested in working with Gen AI, you also get flooded with opportunities. People definitely want to work in this. The vendor space has exploded with interest. So hew to understanding what your strategy is. That's the alignment that you need before you decide to make your bets. All right, I'm going to finish up with a couple of observations. I said AI creates new products and opportunities. I think that's true. I said scale is hard for small-sized organizations. Partners can solve scale, but only partially. Because once you start working with a partner, it takes time from your own organization, attention from your own organization. And so it doesn't completely solve capacity or skills issues. So you have to be selective in understanding who you're going to work with. It's not AI first, it's strategy first, but you need to have strategy and the culture of willingness to collaborate inside the organization. And finally, LLMs are kind of like a new partner, a new partnership model. They are mysterious, deeply so, but they're becoming less mysterious. And on that, I am going to finish, and I thank you for your attention, and I hope you've had a wonderful book fair. Any questions, or do people just want to leg it for champagne, which I can totally understand as well? Thank you very much. Yes.
Oh, sorry. You said that, did we validate the proposition was the slide? And the last part was, are customers willing to pay and not validated? I was curious, how do you determine that? Do you do your own research, or is this just the intuition of the knowledge of the field?
No, our product teams use a couple of different methods. The best method is to ask people to pay. And so you can go through a process where you say, we're working on this prototype, we'll launch it to market next year. You can be an early adopter, pay us X amount now, and you'll be in the early program. And then people will either go, oh, yeah, I'll do that because I'm really, really invested. Or they'll go, come back to me when it's ready. There's a pricing model called the Van Wezenhoek pricing model that you can use to ask certain types of questions. There's another product model called the Kano model. There are lots of specific targeted tools you can use to try and infer pricing. It's the hardest question to get to, though. I remember when I was working at a startup a few years ago, and we had no product that was being paid for. And the very first call we had with a potential customer, and our teams were on the phone with them, and they told them our pricing, and we just heard laughter from the other end of the line. We're like, okay, that pricing's not going to work. So it is hard, but there are methods that you can use. And in this case, our product teams tried a few of them. We didn't just go on a guess.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How long should you wait until you pivot or change your strategy?
Oh my God, that is such a great question. The idea that I told you that we killed, it was really hard to kill, right? We kept coming up with excuses on why we should keep doing it. Oh, well, they won't pay now, but we'll learn so much from doing it. Oh, the partner really wants to work with us. It's not that expensive. It's really, really hard. Ideally, kill it as soon as you can. So ideally, once you can, in fact, we didn't do it in this process, but a process I really like is to only keep it alive once it passes certain questions. And so that was a process I used in a previous company where we kept saying, we're going to kill this unless, and then the unless kept coming true, up to be true. And that was one way to keep ourselves honest. But it is really hard. And I'm responsible for the maintenance of tons of things on the infrastructure side that I believe we should have killed years ago. It's one of the hardest things for organizations to do.
Thank you. Just a brief question. What was the alignment on strategy first, and what was the journey towards strategy first, or as opposed to AI first?
So I joined the organization about 3.5 years ago. With our CEO joined at the same time, and I think when you get kind of new leadership into an organization, there's a bit of a moment where you can step back and go, okay, we have an opportunity here to maybe just sort of rethink things as you're thinking through. And on the global publishing strategy, one of the big changes we made at the BMJ is previously our flagship journal, the BMJ, had been separate inside the organization to the rest of our journals. And we realized that that was leading to problems of scale. And so one of the key decisions we made is, okay, let's bring those teams together. But as we do that, let's also step back and think about what the current strategies are, also certainly in reaction to our understanding of the need to move to OA, really key. That was where the first moment of key strategic decisioning came from. And then I'd say it was sort of a 6 to 8 month process. And where these ideas came from was some of our product teams being tasked with, okay, we think there's opportunity here as part of that strategy process. Can you go and scout for those ideas? And I showed you 2, but there were probably 15 ideas that came out of that process. Yeah. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Great. Okay, great. Again, any more questions? Did you have a question? Like 15 ideas. Yeah, I mean, it was about that. There were tons. I mean, that team was really prolific. Some of them were very easy to throw away because they were like, that's an idea, but oh, it's like not technically possible, or that's an idea, and we very rapidly like didn't move it forward, you know. But I think there were about 15. Yeah, it was quite. No. There's sort of like a 400-page slide deck somewhere in the bowels of BMJ with all of the ideas and validation. Yeah. Yeah. So that question is, how many of those ideas were internal? In this process, none, because they were all about thinking about go-to-market opportunities in the general publishing strategy. The little idea that I showed you, this kind of like the last one we did around this recent grid, the vast majority of those ideas were internal because they're in response to our understanding that at the moment, this bit in the middle is the area that we have most control. So that's kind of a response to thinking about it from a strategic perspective. Yeah. Look, we're at 5. I don't want to hold up everybody. There are receptions to go to. I'll stay around if anyone wants to come up and ask a question. I would just like to thank you for your attendance, your attention, the great questions. It's been a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.